Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I know we just did one yesterday, but I wanted to knock out another Hunter x Hunter review and breakdown because we left on so many cliffhangers that I had to keep going. So, we are here with episode 107, 108, 109. A lot happened and I'm going to do my best to cover as much as I can. I hope I don't miss anything because honestly I was exhausted when I was watching these episodes. Episode 107 kicks off right where we left 106 with Moro getting ready to fight Lael. Moro surrounds himself with smoke. Lael pulls out a surfboard and what's supposed to be a harpoon, but it looks kind of like a mini trident. So it turns out this ability that he just borrowed from somebody can summon tidal waves even in enclosed spaces. Or I guess it only can work during the rain, and it was like heavy rain outside. So the chapel they're in, floods with water, and he starts surfing around, starts trying to basically drown Moro. But Moro is apparently a badass. Apparently, out of all the hunters in the entire association, he has the biggest. What's the word I'm looking for? Lung capacity. And there's one point where he gets hit with a whirlpool. He gets sucked in and blows out air with enough force to push himself out of the whirlpool. He even makes a boat out of his smoke because his smoke, he could basically turn his smoke into anything. But the fight actually ended up not being that long because Lael Lael tried to drown him with another big tidal wave and was going to harpoon him. But because of his lung capacity, he can actually sit underwater for 10 to 20 minutes or even longer. But Lael started seeing, bubbles coming up, and he thought, okay, he's gonna pop up over there. But then he started seeing more bubbles on the sides, and there was bubbles coming up all over the place. And before he knew it, he started to get woozy and collapsed. And because he wasn't, upright and able to maintain himself, the Nen ability canceled out. The water didn't disappear, but the surfboard did. And he ended up in the water, not able to catch his breath, even above the water. So he ended up sinking, and when he got to the bottom, he could see that Moro was just sitting at the bottom of the water, blowing out smoke, and using the smoke to push air out into the only open space above the water. It turns out that Lael thought he was being poisoned. What it actually was that he was blowing out concentrated carbon dioxide. We breathe in oxygen, we breathe out carbon dioxide. Too much carbon dioxide can actually be deadly. So he basically used the carbon dioxide from his massive lungs to poison Lael just enough to ruin his Nen ability and basically let him drown himself. After that, he just swam away. No big deal. We jump over to Palm, and Palm finished taking care of Bezef and is now going to sneak around the compound. But I knew this was going to be a bad idea, and honestly, there was a lot of tension in this part because she makes it all the way to the staircase where Nove made it, and she realized that she has to stop because, again, Poof's end is covering the upper level. And as soon as she starts to head back, Poof's end retreats and retracts itself, and P2's end floods the castle. Obviously, P2's end is much larger, and we don't actually see what happens to Palm. We just see the end coming at her. We know she's already going to get caught, but we don't know what happens. We finally get our answer what happened to Killua, and he's fine. Killua wakes up in a makeshift hospital. I guess it's a hospital for the underground. And Ikago's there, and honestly, he looks adorable with his little gloves and his hat. He tells Killua that he's in a hospital, that he's been out for 2 days. Killua gets billed a ridiculous amount, like 10 million. He can't wire it, so he has to call Gon. He calls Gon. We actually see Gon with Meliodas on a knuckle. They're getting along just fine. Gon tells them that they have a plan to take out the king. He wires the money. All is good. But we get a nice little shot of Gon talking to Knuckle, and he's worried about Palm. They haven't heard from her the entire time she's been on her infiltration mission. And he's starting to worry. He calls Moro to see if Moro heard from him, and Moro hasn't. And unfortunately, we see Nove in his fourth dimensional building thing, and he is not doing well at all. Like Xiao and really just seeing it just absolutely ruin this guy's fighting spirit. He's all done. I got a quick little fan servicey shot for the females that watch this. Turns out Keel was built like a brick shit house. As soon as he takes off his shirt, Ikago's freaking out because his wounds are already healed. But he basically stretches out and gets ready to go. And as he's leaving, he stops and basically tells Ikago, "Are you coming too?" He's just like, "You mean we're friends?" Now, we see something from Ikago's point of view that really just blows my mind. And we see this. Basically, this is his friend, and to him, he's as bright as the sun. Now, you guys know that from Kill's point of view, that's how he viewed Gon. So to see this flip of character was a really big deal. And the episode ends with Killua and Ikago going to meet Gon and crew. Now, episode 108 really just focused on Komugi and Meruem. And a lot went down. A lot. So that episode kicks off with them still playing Gungi, and they've been playing Gungi for 3 days straight. Last time we were with them, there were 6 days to the story, now there's only 3. And poor Komugi is like at her limit. She's exhausted. Her mentality is awful. Even her lips are dry. She needs some milk. Meruem doesn't want to beat her in a tired state. He wants to beat her at her best, so he can actually feel like he really won. So he sends her off to go to bed. Poof has a serious lapse in judgment, where he thinks that he should kill Komugi because she is dangerous and that she is changing the way the king thinks. But he stops himself in reality, and we get to see a little bit into what and how Poof views the entire kingship. If he kills Komugi, that will forever be somebody that he could never beat. She becomes a martyr. Even if Gungi is just a game, the king wants to prove himself to be king of everything. And if Shao Poof kills Komugi before the king has a chance to beat him, then that will forever be a stain that he will never be able to recover from. And he felt like he disrespected the king so badly that he's going to kill himself once the sorting is done. We jump back over to Gon and friends, and they are now going through redoing their plan with the new pieces that they have. Now that they have Melioro, now that they have Ikago, and the fact that they don't have Nove, because Nove was refusing to go back there. They reworked their plan. Everything seems to be going well. Gon is still worried about Palm, but Killua is trying to keep them on task because Killua already has worries of his own. Now we go back to the king and Komugi, and Shao Poof actually goes to the king to give him, an update on the situation with the sorting that's about to, it's coming up in a couple days. He thinks they can actually move it up because things are progressing so well, and he gets yelled at by the king. He's just like, "Listen, those are all stupid decisions. You take care of them. I really don't care. Just leave." And he ends up kicking him out of the throne room, and we see him sitting with Motuzuyupi. We go over to Neferpito, and he's talking to the 2 chimera ants that were hunting Moro with Lael, the wolf and the beetle and the shrimp dude, and they give Pito, a rundown of what happened. Pito goes up, and Pito is just flexing his hand, and just through the soldiers is basically analyzing the situation himself, and he compares his ability to Moro's. He talks about the smoke soldiers. They don't move like Pito's Nen puppets, so he thought they were real soldiers. But he realized it's just one dude doing all this. Now, while Moro can't control as many soldiers as Pitou can, his soldiers are more responsive, more able to, fight or defend themselves. And this is actually making Pitou hungry for a fight. And we get to see this silly face when Pitou's just like, "But I can't leave my post. This sucks." Now, one cool thing that we start seeing between Komugi and the king is that Komugi's actually giving advice to the king on how he can improve his game. And it's weird seeing him play with a different style. But he's enjoying it. He's enjoying learning a new style. And while they're playing, this happens to Komugi, where she starts glowing. I don't know if it's maybe being in close proximity to the king for so long, or being entrapped in P2's end this entire time, but it looks like she is activating Nen for her Gungi skills, which is, kind of weird. But even he's just like, she's awakening. I mean, she's just going to get better. For the first time, she actually asks for a break because she wants to go and record the moves that are flowing into her head. And she says that as long as she feels the board plays out the moves, that she will remember them no matter what. And he realizes just how good she actually is, because she remembers every move she's ever made. He gives her the chance to go take a break, and as she's leaving, he decides to ask her name. And that's when he learns that her name is Komugi. And she, as respectfully as she can, she's like, I hope I'm not being too forward, but I would like to know your name. And he freezes, and this is the first time we really see him freak out, because he realizes that he doesn't know his own name. He's never had the chance to know. I mean, he basically killed his mother before she had the chance to tell him his name. We know his name because, we were there when she died, but he doesn't know it. He even calls the Royal Guard up, and it's just like, what is my name? And Poof is frustrating, because he's such an intelligent character, but he's so wrapped around. I said it in the reaction to one of my, I think it was the Meruem and the Royal Guards rap, that Poof isn't so loyal to the king as he is to his ideal of what the king should be. And honestly, it's so frustrating when he answers, because he's just like, you're the king, you don't have another name. But the king is not a name, it's a title. Even Meruem knows that. The title of king can be bestowed onto anybody. But he asked Youpi. Youpi's like, that's beyond me. Apparently, Youpi doesn't have much intelligence because he's supposed to be a hybrid of Chimera Ant and Magical Beast. He's specifically meant to be a weapon. He asks Pitou about it, and Pitou's just like, why don't you just pick a name, one that sounds good to you? So he decides he's going to do that after the sorting. But now we start seeing some things flow into Meruem, and he starts talking about how Komugi has awakened. The fact that he knows her name now actually bothers Poof. And he starts talking about how she's awakened, and she's just going to get stronger, but it's in Gungi. And how on their way here, he killed a child for food, but that child could eventually, grow into surpass him in a certain field. And at first, Poof is freaking out because he's like, no, stop saying it, don't say it, don't keep going with this train of thought. He thinks that Meruem is saying that he regrets killing the child because he regrets somebody who could have potentially been a genius in a specific field, better than him in a specific field. And before Poof had the chance to say it, like he's about to spit it out, the king's just like, no, I killed him for no reason, simply because I wanted to, and because I could. And he's just like, that's what I am. He's just like, no matter how good somebody is, how much better than me somebody is at something else, I am the strongest, and my skill is violence. And because of that, it doesn't matter what they're good at. Like, Komugi is better than him at Gungi. Cool. He kills Komugi, now he's the best at Gungi, so it doesn't even matter. And he takes this to heart. He ends up flexing a little bit, and then he finally decides that he's going to kill Komugi. That she was just a distraction, he doesn't care about her, and he's just going to take her out because he's gotten all he could out of her. Poof breaks down because he realizes that he was about to disrespect the king, and even Yopi's just like, you think too much. And if she's really that big of a problem, we should just kill her. Well, Meruem goes to her room, and inside she's being attacked by an eagle. First off, I don't know how an eagle got in there with making almost no noise, but it is what it is. And she's getting clawed up. As soon as he sees her all clawed up and bloody, he immediately kills the eagle without any hesitation. And he starts freaking out because she's hurt. And he grabs her up. He's just like, look at you, why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you call for help? And she says she didn't want to be a bother because it's so late at night and people were probably sleeping. And he's like, it doesn't matter, you weren't going to be a bother, you're a guest of the king's. And she starts crying, and he doesn't understand what's going on. And he's thinking to himself, what am I saying? But she says, I've never had someone be so nice to me. and he's baffled at himself. He's baffled at her. He has no idea what he wants or what the situation is that's developing between the two of them. Like, friendship was never on his mind. It was never explained to this dude, and the episode ends with him questioning everything he believes in. It was such a killer episode. I loved it. The last episode we're going to cover, 109, is literally the calm before the storm. It starts off with Ikaga waking up to go and exercising with Killua, talking to him. And they're trying to piece together, anything that can go wrong with their plan. Like, for example, they're trying to figure out how Nove was able to even infiltrate the palace. Because normally, Pito's end covers the entire palace. But the day that Nove infiltrated, Pito had stopped using end, and they try to figure out why. They call up Colt, and Colt gives, the lowdown on Pito's Nen ability. We actually get to see him with the little girl Chimera, the baby that he's offered to protect. It's still right there. So, this picture kind of sucks, but that's her in the middle. You can see her tail. Well, they are able to postulate that P2 was doing, medical work on somebody, and that probably took the majority of P2's N. Majority of his Nen. Nen and so much. I'm sorry. Well, they end up figuring out that P2 would obviously never, ever compromise the king's security for anyone else. So it had to be that he was repairing the king. Well, if that were the case, none of the royal guards, none of the other ants could hurt the king at all. So the only one who could have hurt the king was himself. And they tell Moro all this, and they're trying to figure out why the king would hurt himself. Moro understands that this was the luckiest thing that could have happened. If it weren't for him tearing off his own arm, they would have never been able to enact this plan. Nove would have never even made it onto the grounds. Granted, he wouldn't be the mess that he is right now, but it is what it is. Moro retracts, his deep purple. Calls back, you see him with Knuckle and Shoot, as they're overlooking the city as all of the citizens start streaming out of the buildings. They jump into the fourth dimension, and they're resting, eating, drinking, and we get to see what Nove looks like. Because they're trying to figure out who's going to keep an eye on the palace, because it's weird. Like, they can't just stay in here, because if anything changes, they'll never know. They can't just stay outside because they have too high of a chance of getting spotted. They can't use their cell phones outside. So Nove decides he is going to at least keep lookout for them, because he's the only one who can freely enter this space and leave it. Because once they enter this space, they can only leave through one of the portals that he made, and that's it. Moro reminds him about the flexibility of P2's N, and apparently, while it is in a weird shape around the perimeter of the castle, he can kind of condense it and aim it up to like 2 kilometers in one direction, which is kind of crazy. Or was it 200 kilometers? There was 200 kilometers, but you get it. It's bananas. So Nove ends up out there by himself, still freaking out, still saying he's never gonna face these beings ever again. He even says he's never gonna take another risk in his life. Like, I feel bad for him. He has Marie Antoinette syndrome. If you guys don't know what that is, it's like when your hair turns gray or white, and from like being super stressed out. That's kind of what also happened to Kaneki. If anybody ever watched Tokyo Ghoul. Now we get a quick shot of the king with P2, and he basically scolds P2 for not saying that Komugi was in trouble. But P2's only worried about protecting the king. He's like, there was no threat to you, so I didn't feel the need to say anything. So the king orders P2 to now be watching for threats to Komugi as well. Again, we start to see him show signs that he cares about her. Now, while Nove is watching the castle, he sees this. It's Poof using, I guess, scales or dust from his wings to basically hypnotize all the citizens outside of the castle. And they're basically becoming all straight zombies. And the soldiers are yelling orders to them, basically stay in line, keep moving forward. Basically, while they're in a hypnotic state, they're basically catatonic. we get everybody gathered together, going over the situation one last time. They're actually happy that the people are hypnotized, so they don't go into a panic frenzy when the fight starts. Because if all these people started, trying to run away, the hundreds of thousands of people, there would have been a lot of casualties, especially like smaller children and whatnot. They'd just get run over. Gon and Killua were the last ones to show up, and Shoot actually comments on how confident they look, especially Killua. He's like a whole different person from when Shoot fought him. We know why, because of the needle that was altering his personality. But he's also points out that he notices that every now and then Killua is really sad. I don't really know what that's about. My guess is he's starting to notice the change in Gon, and it's causing some concern. But we also hear him mention that he's got a new ability, Godspeed. I've played Jump Force. I know what it is, and I've been waiting for him to use it. Gon is just focused on P2. That's all he wants. Like, we get everybody's last thoughts about everything that's going to be happening. Shoot's got some anxiety. Nove doesn't want to fight. Poor Moral is exhausted. He's had 2 major fights back to back. He's had to use a lot of N. He's had to keep up his deep purple. Like, he's exhausted. He even says that he's going in there at 35%, and he's ready to just give his life because it makes going in with such a limited amount of power makes accepting his fate easier, is what he says. I don't want to see him die, but it is what it is. Knuckle talks about Meleoron and Ikalgo and how, even ants can have hearts, and he hopes the king has a heart because he doesn't want to see all the ants die. But he knows it's us or them. We gotta do what we gotta do. The time finally hits, and we get one last shot of the king, and he's asking himself why he was born, because he doesn't know. He knew he was always supposed to rule, but now he's questioning if that's really what he was there for. Everybody ends up gathering up outside the portal, and the episode ends with them about to attack the castle. And this is why I call it the calm before the storm, because this is literally the end of their preparation. Next episode, they're going in, and I'm excited. But that's it for now, guys, and this is probably going to be the only episode. This is probably going to be the last episode I do for this week. So we'll have to jump back into it next week when we start covering some more episodes. So stay tuned for that. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, please drop a like, subscribe if you're new, and keep an eye out for the next one. But that's it from me, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Later.